Show. We'll be taking you through the surprisingly robust 8-game Tuesday slate we have in front of us. New year, new you for the NBA. I'm Chris Spags, joined by the premier basketball analysis on this YouTube channel during Live Before Lock on certain days of the week. Fast Eddie Fear. How you doing, Eddie? I went for extra specific for you that time.
I enjoy some extra equivocation. There's at some point I'm gonna go back through all the shows you hosted me through from the beginning of the year and put these steadily together. Like, I have no alternative other than to assume you're just not impressed with me. Because literally the first day of the year, apparently by reputation, you're like, the premier analyst in the industry, the smartest man I've ever met, possessed with the powers of telekinesis and other, like, and now you're just like, one of the smartest two guys on this show right now. It's been a
I think it's also
descent.
my personal enthusiasm on a given day for whatever that's worth. Some days I'm just like, hey, here's this dude.
I'm just playing with you. It's more accurate now than it was then, I assure you. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm ready to talk basketball. It's been a long day. That's why I usually like the slower Tuesday slates, because then we have like 2 games to go through instead of me having to
If I
like
could
cram
do
that
what your
last hour.
dog could do in the background. Unfortunately, the people on the stream can't see it because of how I have you clipped, but your dog in the background is cleaning himself in a most dexterous way. I want to take a minute and
She is a lady. She is cleaning herself like a delicate woman does.
you can find autoconolingus. It requires an exceptional amount of flexibility, but if you search the internet, it's one of those things you can find. Shout
And
out
that's
for
an 8-year-old dog lady, so she is fully flexible still at that age. Good for her.
And I will keep this brief, but yeah, my dog got out of surgery earlier today and riddled with cancer. So we're into that. Yeah. So we're now into that. You know, we had a long talk about, do we just do this now while he's on the table and feeling no pain, and we went the other way, and long conversation as to whether or not he'd get back to any decent quality of life for a while, but we're gonna go with the more expensive and hopeful way and hope we can squeeze a few more months out of him and get him, healthy enough for a while. We can give him a handful of great days before we do that difficult thing that you have to do. But love you, buddy.
Oh, well, shouts to Eddie's dog. I went through that last year. My dog, who was just licking herself vigorously, had some kidney issues, and I had to pay like 20 grand out of pocket for surgery to get a stent put in. Not the best, but when you love the dog, what are you going to do? And insurance ended up covering most of it, thankfully. But it's a tough choice. But you gotta make the choice that your heart says. So shouts to Eddie's dog. Get better soon. What's the dog's name?
Wish I had some of that insurance. Champ.
Oh, Champ. Well, get better, Champ. That's a good winner's name. We like that.
Yeah, he's good stuff.
Good boy. Well, speaking of good boys, you're all going to be good boys today with the lineups we give you. We are presented by Thrive, but it's not one of their full sponsorship days, so we don't have to do a Thrive pick. But go check out Thrive now. Use the promo code Live Before Lock. You get a deposit bonus. You get all these sorts of free bankroll things that you would want from Thrive. No slow release there. So go check them out now. Download the app and use the promo code. Is it Live Before Lock? Whatever. I don't have the copy in front of me because it's not actually their sponsorship day, but I was feeling really vigorous.
Yeah, it's your ambivalence knows no bounds.
It does. It's been a long day. But let's talk about the slate, Eddie. We got a lot of late breaking news. Some guys being rolled out. Miles Turner's out. Some other key news items that you may want to hit on. Take us through the news items that you feel like are affecting the slate the most right now.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the news just in the last minute, actually. Collison available, Corey Joseph available. So with those gentlemen available to play now, it does simplify that situation there. No need to really go crazy there. Obviously, we're not jumping on Aaron Holiday now. No reason to think that this is the day that Tyreek Evans suddenly gets off the schneid now. The third time this year that the Cavs and the Pacers have gotten together. And obviously we had that one really, might have been the last game the Cavs won, come to think of it. They've lost like 9 games in a row, I think. But they had that nice tip-in Nance day. Nance, if we didn't get the news that Delhi was back and Ante Zizic is back and he's starting at the 4, so he's not going to get the backup 5 minutes, I would have had some interest in Larry Nance today, but I don't think we can go there now. But with Hood out, there was enough going on, and he's played really well against the Pacers in the past and in the 2 games this season. I wanted to do that, but doesn't seem like we can fully recommend that now. Kevin Huerter was just ruled out a minute ago as well. You're still asking for a lot of trouble there. So let's stick with one game and talk for a little bit here. So yeah, let's talk about the the Raptors and the Hawks. Hawks down another very usable body at this point. You would stand to think they get pretty reasonably rolled here. Again, projecting blowouts is dangerous, but this is a team that already runs an incredibly even minutes load and goes pretty deep into the bench, and then in a blowout we can expect that to be somewhat worse. Not that dissimilar from what we're looking at with the Knicks today. There's also some back-to-backs to go around here, I should mention. We talked about this yesterday, and we talked a lot about the ancillary pieces on the Nets, and then the show before left, I was like really, really worried that they go real apeshit terrible on the minutes for people on the back end of a back-to-back, which Kenny does a lot. And yesterday was a good example of that. Now, thankfully, he laid off the chalky guy. He stayed off Shabazz Napier, who played 33 minutes. But that was by far the most on the team. You got 28 for Kuruc, you got 24 for Dinwiddie, and 23 for Russell, and it was just a gigantor mess there. Certainly not as much history to see that Lloyd Pierce is so similarly inclined to such a thing, but they are on the front end of a back-to-back. The Hawks play again tomorrow, so yet another reason to think, hey, I don't know how crazy this is going to get, and a shit matchup with a massive line on the road there. So if you wanted to play still really cheap some places, Trae Young, I think the ownership is low enough that, yeah, you can do that in a tournament. And John Collins at the DK price, I think you could make a similar argument. But really a team, even with Porter out, that I'm loath to get overly excited about. Across the ball, I have some interest in some of the bench guys there, especially with the news that Danny Green is out now. I think you can take some pretty interesting, because there's a lot of decently chalky, decently good-looking value today. I think some of those Toronto guys, specifically Delon Wright and Norman Powell, make some sense as tournament shots here. Now, without Danny Green there, that's going to open up some more minutes and, more importantly, some more usage in that second unit, and those guys are closing out the game in an event of a blowout. So I definitely think, firing in 150, I'd have, I think, 7 Norman Powell and 3 Delon Wrights or something. Again, it's a little site dependent, but some interest for those guys hasn't been talked about a lot. Top of my heading it for the 76ers with Redick being out. I don't want to overreact to that. I really don't like Furkan here. He's now moving from getting a decent role on the second unit a lot of the time to moving into the starting unit, and he's got to now share usage with some usage behemoths. So it seems fairly unlikely that he manages to carve out a ceiling game in that role. Not out of play just because now we think he gets 27 minutes at a very tolerable price, but I'm not Furkan excited.
Good wordplay there.
Thanks. I try. Kyle O'Quinn. We were on the Pacers. I should talk about Kyle O'Quinn for a minute here. I'd still like Kyle O'Quinn. He's a very, very, $12 on Yahoo, 35 on DK. Both of those numbers make a lot of sense. The matchup is great for him. Right now, I have him projected for 17 minutes and 22.5 fantasy points. There's a chance you get 23, 25 minutes out of him here if this game goes sideways. And even in Cleveland, I really wouldn't be shocked to see the Pacers throw a whooping on him, especially now with everyone available for this team. So I legit like Kyle O'Quinn. FanDuel, I still think he's fine if you want to roll him out there in a tournament, but I really like paying up at center, and there's so much value that I think is superlative at other places where I think you want to be playing Otto Porter if you're playing one lineup. I think you want to be playing Josh Jackson, certainly, if you're playing one lineup. And we'll talk about those guys some more, and they can certainly disappoint. But I have a feeling most lineup builds would lead me to feeling that punting center isn't the best play in the world. That being said, if I'm punting center, it is with Kyle O'Quinn. But so my reticence on FanDuel is only due to the positional scarcity.
Some people, because you mentioned the Hawks up top, some people in the chat, and throughout the day I've seen it mentioned as well, the narrative of Vince Carter in Toronto for the last time, potentially. Does that affect anything for you with that Hawks rotation? And would you have any Vince Carter exposure if you're playing a bunch of lineups?
It's cute. I don't hate it, certainly. The minutes flow a number of places here, and he does play up to the same position that Huerter is in. So with Huerter out, I think, that's another reason to look that way. I don't have, certainly off the top of my head, whether or not Lloyd Pierce has previously been, so I'll use sentimental as an adjective here. But I don't hate it. He's, $3,400 or whatever. I think it's perfectly cute. I think your most likely line is, maybe we get towards the top of his minutes and you get 26 minutes, and maybe he busts out 30 fantasy points. But again, you're on the road in Toronto, so you need a lot of things to work out. So you're fading some better value, and you need him to get the publicity, the happy time run, and then you need him to be productive with it in a pretty shitty environment. So maybe we'll see Vince Carter starting. I don't think we've specifically heard this is the Hawks starting lineup, and that would certainly lean me more towards it. But I think it's probably a little too cute. But if you have a lineup and you have Vince Carter in there, I certainly wouldn't feel too bad.
While we're talking about blowout games, we do have a question from the premium Slack. And again, you get access to that premium Slack with the promo code LiveBeforeLock on Awesemo.com. You also get all the ownership projections and rankings that we discuss from the top player in the world, Awesemo. So go use that promo code LiveBeforeLock now on the site and get it. But Goon77 asking on the premium Slack, any thoughts on Mario Hezonja and Damian Dotson, who has a better chance at reaching 25 points? I guess give me that thought about those two guys, but also what do you think about this Knicks game where Vegas literally projects them for a blowout? It's a 17-point spread.
Yeah, it was weird. The first time this year that the Warriors and the Knicks played, it was in the Garden, and you had that weird game which was a massive blowout, and all the starters got full run because the Knicks were winning by, I want to say they were winning by 3 going to the fourth quarter, and lost by 28. Mm-hmm. They got outscored. I don't have it in front of me. Something like 45-18 in the fourth quarter, or 48-16, or some just absolute barn stomping in the fourth quarter. So you ended up with this weird situation where the Warriors won by mid-20s, I believe, and you still got 35 minutes out of all the starters on the Warriors, and so you got 60 points out of Durant, and you got perfectly usable fantasy lines out of the other guys. Now we're going over to Oracle. Could it happen again? Sure. The Warriors notoriously play the Kings really close, play a couple of the scrubby teams close, and again played this Knicks team very close for the first 36 minutes of this game before taking them out to the shed for the fourth quarter. But there's at least some reasonable chance of a blowout. And you're saying, what are the guys you like in a blowout? My personal favorite would be Trey Burke for the ownership. And for what I project to be a little higher upside and a slightly better matchup against who I think would be running on the court for the blowout inducing Warriors at that point. And my second would be Mario Hezonja. I won't pretend to have any idea what Fizdale is going to do on any given day. He's just doing that march into my own be the drummer thing. I've just with the bigs and with Enes Kanter, I've been shocked at how jacked up. You don't run guys out there and you want to develop your youth. Okay, that's fine. Then start them and play them more minutes the whole year. Stop rotating through guys. And then last game you got 31 minutes of Hezonja off the bench, which, okay, maybe that happens again. And I like 31 minutes of Hezonja, and that's the safer play between him and Trey Burke, because apparently there's at least some real chance that even if the game is competitive, he's playing 30 minutes. And then if the game is blowout, well, he's probably out there then as well. So that feels a little bit safer. We still have no Mitchell Robinson, which makes the centers a little more accessible. We still have no Frank Ntilikina, which is one of the reasons I like Trey Burke, just because, I do think they get their ass kicked, and I think Trey Burke plays the entire fourth quarter, and it's more of a FanDuel play for me. He's 34, whatever the number is on DK, so he's so super cheap. He's still in play there, but FanDuel, where he's 4K a point, and you can drop him, and I'm not shocked if he randomly picks up 30 fantasy points in blowout time. Big fan of Trey Burke over there as far as looking at the Knicks. And I still think you can play Enes Kanter. It's dangerous as hell. There is, for several teams now, the Warriors play this fun game of, go after Enes Kanter, everybody go score on Enes Kanter. Literally to the point that they talk about it in press conferences and they, humiliate him to a certain extent. They're like, let's run some switches. Okay, you score on Enes Kanter now. It's like bullying on a playground. It's really sort of embarrassing for a professional athlete and one I like the most. But they make him look bad, pretty legit. But yeah, it's certainly the safer of those guys. I mean, Hezonja may be my favorite play on the Knicks, just in a cash lineup. I think it would probably be Hezonja, just because it seems like sort of at least a pretty good chance he gets a metric ton of time in a pretty good pace spot. For a really reasonable price. So if you wanted to go there, certainly something you can do. It does end up being pretty site dependent as well. On FanDuel, Hezonja still the minimum. That feels great. The problem is Otto Porter's 4,900 and TJ Warren's 6,200. If I'm building one lineup, I don't know how I get away from those two guys. they're both really underpriced. They're both using like FanDuel standards, about $1,500 underpriced. Otto Porter should be 6.5. TJ Warren should be 7.5, and they're just way cheap, and both in spots that I really like them, especially Warren. So it's really tough to play Mario Hezonja because there's just some amazing small forward plays. But yeah, I guess that's as much time as it's a Mario time needed.
Ryan in the premium Slack asking your thoughts on the stud on DraftKings. We have 6 guys above 10,000, a couple guys right behind that. A lot of price ups. I guess which overpriced players or highly priced players rather are you feeling the most comfortable with today?
Yeah, I mean, I like Durant or Curry if you're going to run some sort of game stack environment. If you want to run a lineup with either Durant or Curry or any more than, like, you can play a Golden State player. My highest projected score on that team is Durant. I would rather pay I think it's $100 extra on DraftKings for Durant if I'm paying up for one of those guys. Positionally agnostic. But because of what I expect to be just a giant ass-kicking, I do think they all become just sort of tournament plays. My least favorite of them after that would be Towns. I don't like the matchup for Towns. There's some uncertainty with Saunders Jr. taking over what's going on with the lineup. I really don't know what's going to happen with Minnesota. It ends up being site dependent. I'm probably less high on Dario Saric than a lot of other people, simply because there's a lot of other pretty cheap chalk I like from, well, I'll go through a few of them in a minute, but they just all have much better matchups. The Oklahoma City Thunder are a really good defensive team. And the pace is nice and everything, but you know, for Sarge to work out, I'll be generous and say I project him for a fantasy point a minute, and I don't. I would have him a little under that in what's not the world's best spot. There's a real chance that the rotations don't change significantly and he plays 22 minutes, and then there's a chance that they immediately, like, I do think that it is very likely between now and the end of the year you get a lot more time out of many of the younger players, and just there's less sentimentality where Thibodeau, was in love with the 2012 Chicago Bulls, and so Taj was getting more time than maybe he deserved. But I don't know if that all comes to pass on the first night. So, like, I would like to think that we look at this team moving into a more, A, less abusive towards the players' rotation, and B, a more modern system of focusing a little more on three-pointers, which they've really been wont to do in the past. But I don't know how much of that comes in tonight. Like, how much time has the coach really had to be like, oh, okay, everybody, here we go. We're on the road in Oklahoma City. We're putting in this entirely new program. I'm walking around the rotations, and, Towns, I'm yanking these minutes off of you. Like, it would not surprise me that any of the changes that people, I think, reasonably expect are a little more gradual than people seem to expect. So I have Sarge tonight for 23 minutes. In a difficult matchup, which thusly makes me less excited than, D'Anthony Melton, who is in a great spot and costs similar, and I have projected for 6 more minutes, or Kyle O'Quinn, who I projected for 6 less minutes, but I still projected for more fantasy points. The stupid price of Justin. Like, if you're playing either Sarge or Jackson on FanDuel, for me it's Justin Jackson, not terribly close. Like, Justin Jackson is playing the Kings, and I have projected for 10 more minutes than Dario Saric. So I can only hope those two guys are roughly evenly owned. And I will give the appropriate caveat here saying Justin Jackson, as min priced to $4,000 power forward on FanDuel earlier this year, went through a period of incompetence and impotence that is difficult to conceive. I don't have it up in front of me, but there was basically a week where Booker was out and everyone was injured. Sometimes Booker and Warren was out, and they're like, all right, Justin Jackson is getting the start, and he was like $3,800 and supposed to play like 35 minutes and averaged like 4 fantasy points a game for 6 games. Like, he was negative for a lot of the time, where he did 5 turnovers and 11 fouls, and so and the other caveat I will give there is that the Sacramento and Phoenix is pretty significantly my favorite game here for, I think, obvious reasons. But just earlier this week, we were all sort of duped by Phoenix playing better. And again, this line tonight is like even.
Yeah, that
right?
Clippers game on Friday hurt me pretty bad.
Yeah, where they just we won't play the Clippers. Like, I know we're going to play the Clippers, but so that whole thing happened where they totally disappeared. And let us not forget the last time that the Kings and the Suns played earlier this year, also in Phoenix, and a lot of players in that game were very popular, and the Kings crushed them. I believe that was the 9-point first quarter. I'm not sure, but I believe that was the 36-9 first quarter.
I believe that was also a Josh Jackson start day too.
Yeah. So, but again, here's the other thing: you drop him, so I'm just hunting upside. On FanDuel, you consider ownership, you consider protection, but I'm hunting upside. Could Sarge against the Thunder go out and put up 40? Sure, but I consider it 1/5 as likely that Josh Jackson against the Kings at home goes out and puts up 40. That's just sort of where I come down on it. So, I have Melton for more minutes than most people, I think. I do think he fills into this rotation a bit more. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. Sans, Booker, all these guys, because of the game environment, because of the extra usage and some extra minutes are interesting. But I don't know. I have more minutes going to Melton than to, say, Jamal Crawford, who's going to pick up some extra time off the bench. And in this situation for a couple of weeks, really got his assist on. I had a lot of credit for 38-year-old Jamal Crawford going out of there and really playing very adequate point guard for a while there. I've given him, at the start of the year, they acquired him and there was a string of games where he was getting 25 minutes and scoring 25 fantasy points for only a couple $100 off the minimum. People kept asking me to recommend him and I was like, here's the problem. He doesn't do anything but score. These are ceiling games. He had 3 games in a row where he shot, 8 for 11 and scored 20 points and had 2 rebounds and assists and a steal and had 26 fantasy points. And I was like, yeah, but it's just not going to get any better. And then where the scoring fell off a little bit, there was a stretch there for a couple of weeks where he was averaging 6-7 assists. And I was pretty impressed by that. So there's a chance they look back more his way. So Warren is the obvious guy there. Ayton certainly makes some sense, but he's no longer so cheap that we're super excited. But the matchup is a good one to me. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with, Melton and Crawford and Jackson to an extent, some of the other guys on this team. And again, Justin Jackson is $4,900 on DK. That's fine to play. Stacks up really nicely in the game. Certainly can smash that price, but he's $1,900 over the floor, and you're stuck with him, even if he gives you 6 fantasy points because he gets 5,011 turnovers in 28 minutes, and he can do that. On FanDuel, it's $4,100, and you can drop him. That's too hard for me to get away from.
You mentioned the new Wolves coach, and obviously that's been a point of debate for some people. I've heard a lot of chatter about Andrew Wiggins today, and he picks up a pretty good ranking from Osmo as well. At least on DraftKings, he's a B in points and an A in value. Yeah. I'm a little less sold on Wiggins than people seem to be today. I don't know if his ownership I'll check when the update comes out if it's going to be up a little bit. But for all the tout love he's been getting today, I'm not sure I'm buying it. I think his minutes are going to be down a little for the reasons we talked about. And I hate the matchup versus the Thunder. The Thunder defensively just beat up on teams and wear them down. And a guy like Wiggins, who thrives best in kind of optimal conditions, doesn't really speak to me today. But what are your thoughts on Wiggins and I guess the rest of the Wolves? Because you talked about Sarge at depth.
Yeah, that was my first impression there. But Wiggins has been much more immune than you would have thought to Paul George specific defense in the past. I don't know if he steps up for the challenge. Wiggins is a tough player for me to figure out. Most players I can, if I'm looking at Ricky Rubio or Brook Lopez or Andre Drummond, there's just a lot of players where I really understand them. This is who they're good against. This is who they're bad against. This is how it's going to go. Wiggins is so much above the neck, as in so many of his problems are mental and motivational and other things that I don't know what's going on where. So maybe it's because he, steps it up against Paul George and looks at it as a personal challenge. But he's generally been better. It is a positive split for him, which is really strange. But they played earlier this year, and Wiggins had 30 real points in that game. He outscored. If you look at the last number of games if you look at the last 3 or 4 games, Andrew Wiggins against the Thunder and Karl-Anthony Towns against the Thunder, I think Wiggins legitimately has more fantasy points. Not weighted for salary. Wiggins has a 40 and a couple 30 and 35s in there, and Towns, Steven Adams' stuff has, 35, 40, 45, 35, I think. He's had decent games against Adams in the past. You have seen ceiling games where we've had, again, I don't have it in front of me, but 35 and 16 with some stuff. We've had 60 fantasy points out of Towns against Adams. So it can certainly happen. And he's the guy who I think we know is the centerpiece of this, franchise. So he might lose a minute or two off the 38 minutes he'd been playing, but he's still going to be a real piece of this. So no issue with someone running Towns out there. But for whatever reason, Wiggins has been fairly solid in this spot in the past. So there are just a ton of other plays I think I like more. It obviously ends up being site dependent, but there is still an upside there. I think with all the value opening up and all the news coming in, I'm still disinclined. I would rather just play Otto Porter, who saves you 1,600 on FanDuel, which is obviously much better, and 400 on DK. I have Otto Porter projected for a fantasy point higher, so I'm a bigger fan of Otto Porter. But it is not. I guess I'm saying I had the same visceral reaction you did, which was like, oh really, Paul George and I don't know, and maybe I don't know, but there is some data and tape to back up the fact that this is an environment in which he can excel.
All right, fair enough. So I guess trust your Wigginses if you are a person inclined to trust your Wigginsies. I think for me too, Bogdanovich being right there price-wise on DraftKings. Like there are guys who I trust who are more active in other categories than Wiggins, and I think that puts me there. But, you do have to shed these biases. And when a guy has had a pretty decent run like Wiggins has, I think you can maybe consider going back to him. Right? Yeah. Your heart can heal and you can trust him again. Let's see. In a cash game build on FanDuel, would you go Delon and Embiid or Buddy Hield and Ayton? We're getting either orders early.
Delon and Embiid or Buddy Hield and Ayton in a cash build. I'd have to go Delon and no, I'd have to go Buddy Hield and Ayton at that point. That's a much safer play. We don't know necessarily what you're going to get out of Delon Wright. He's not necessarily productive, and if that game doesn't blow out, you can get 11 or 12 points there, and just Hield and Ayton, you're stacking up a couple guys who we feel pretty good are going to give you 35. So I like Embiid a lot, but not enough that in cash that seems like a better play for me. Also, I think he said FanDuel, which is weird because those guys don't play the same positions. But no, they do. I'm sorry, stand corrected. I got a little wonky where they Yahoo Buddy Hield's small forward. That's where I got confused.
Before we go do the halftime Daddy Likes with our ownership projections at Osmo.com, one quick question for you. Actually, no, real quick thoughts on the Philly situation. We have Jimmy Butler coming back to the lineup. Obviously, been grousing a little bit. Reports of him going hard at Brett Brown have been coming out. Does that impact your feelings on that Philly team at all, even though they are in a pretty positive spot versus the Wizards?
Yeah, I think, again, I haven't heard anything to support this, but there is generally in sports, fantasy sports, there is a certain squeaky wheel, get some grease type thing. So in general, player publicly bitching about his coach/team/front office before a game is a good thing for that player more often than not. If you somehow track this, you would find out that, yes, this guy is, Antonio Brown was mouthing out a lot this week. His potential targets are going to go up by 2. Like, it is a real thing. So I still think with all the other plays there and just, you can look at several guys who I have projected very similarly in just the Sacramento-Phoenix game. Jimmy Butler is a luxury, but if you're looking to find a low-owned tournament play where he's obviously a guy who can, given the opportunity, put up the numbers, that makes sense. And you like having Redick out as well. That's a minor cookie for him. So I'm fine with Jimmy Butler in tournaments. Again, I'd rather not play Furkan. I certainly don't think it's a Wilson Chandler day. I left Jonah Bolden in my rankings, but at that point you're looking for... it's worth pointing out this game could very potentially blow out. So whenever you're talking about playing Bradley Beal or Ben Simmons or Jimmy Butler or Joel Embiid, those are significant investments for a game that won't necessarily stay close. Now, I said the same thing the other day where we had the Wizards in Oklahoma City, and I placed a very rare sports bet for me on Oklahoma City, -10, and that did not come to fruition. So, maybe this Wizards team is turning an emotional corner here. But I guess, my final Philly takes would be that Embiid I probably still like the most, though it's site dependent. There are sites where lots of centers are priced very well, like say Yahoo and DraftKings, and there are sites like FanDuel where really none of the centers are priced that well, so you may as well, you're perfectly happy if you get 57 out of Embiid because you could end up with the highest scoring center still by 10. But probably Embiid my favorite, then Simmons, then Butler, all perfectly reasonable tournament plays. None I have a really strong take on past that.
We are at the halfway point, so let's go through a little halftime Daddy Likes here. The most recent update was about 10 minutes before we came on, so these numbers may change a little towards the end of the show. But check the promo code live before lock on Osmo.com. Get in yourself, and you can check these ownership updates as they come, and Osmo's rankings updates as well as they go along. Eddie, number 1 on the list today, Josh Jackson at 33% on DraftKings. What does Daddy think about that?
Yeah, let me take a minute and clarify the Jacksons, because I apparently went back and forth between saying Justin Jackson and Josh Jackson, or someone messaged me saying I did, so hopefully I clarified. My commentary for most of the time there was on Josh Jackson of the Phoenix Suns.
I think it was clear by context
I,
because
I,
we were
I
talking
would hope
about.
so, but Justin Jackson bears some consideration as well, and just in case I was unclear. So basically, everything I said was referring to Josh Jackson of the Phoenix Suns, who obviously is in a strong matchup against the Kings and picks up just tons of usage and the start and all sorts of goodies with Devin Booker not there. Justin Jackson still makes plenty of sense as well. Bagley is going to get rested on the back end of a back-to-back here, and Amon Shumpert is still out, and so he maintains a significant role in the rotation, and he's I think still minimum on Yahoo and 36 or some such number on DK. So I don't have an issue with Justin Jackson, but Justin Jackson is a much more frenetic quantity. Now he's a nice cheap piece if you are stacking this game. And I certainly don't have an issue with anyone running, Justin Jackson, because again, with the people they have missing, I have him for 27 minutes right now. But really a guy who can put up single digits in 27 minutes. He's also a guy who can put up 40 and just recently did it in similar time where he made whatever. In the record-setting three-pointer game, he contributed many of them. But Josh Jackson, also obviously a real guy who can pick up a floor, but much safer than Justin if you're looking at those two teams. But with still no Shumpert, that makes some degree of sense. So what
How
do I
about
feel
Josh
about
at 33%?
Yeah, 33% Josh Jackson. At $4,900, I'd probably want the under. There's just a lot of pieces of this game that I'd like to have a piece of. I'm surprised he's higher owned than Bogdan, who I would have thought, obviously, you're spending a grand more, but would have been higher on that list. I have Josh Jackson projected for a little less than Nemanja Bjelica, who, again, with no Shumpert and with no Bagley, becomes, a more reliable 32-minute play where he's like $5,300, I want to say. So I'll say Daddy doesn't like that. If I'm building 150 lineups, I have 20 Josh Jackson at $4,900, but 33% I won't have 50, which is what that would be.
How about the Anthony Melton, number 2 at 24%?
Probably barely under on that as well. There's a lot of good value here, and I think I have no issue with anyone playing any amount of the Anthony Melton. Even on FanDuel, where I want to say it's 45. A tournament, I like pivoting to Trey Burke. I like pivoting some other guys. We lost some of the Indiana options that would have been other nice pivots, so that makes some degree of it's not a bad play. At 4,100, even if he continues to only get 20, 22, 24 minutes, he can certainly get on top of that. In point of fact, when they played earlier this year in that ridiculous blowout, should memory serve, Eliakobo started that game, so Melton actually got more minutes because, again, it was a beating. And he played 24 minutes and had 32-ish fantasy points in that game, if memory serves. So he can certainly get there even if he doesn't get the potential boost of randomly playing 29 minutes in this game. So I like the Anthony Melton as a play. No call. Like, that's right about the ownership level I think I'd want to have.
Let's see. Number 3 on the list. How about Russell Westbrook at 23%?
Yeah, again, that's about appropriate. Won't take a strong stand on that. I do like the matchup for him quite a bit, and it is my highest overall score at this point by a couple points. So hard not to like that. Has been good in that spot in the past. So I'll say Daddy likes that. I'd want to get on. Daddy likes that. I want to get on top of it.
We're going to finish out the top 5. One real quick tangent because some of the YouTube chat brought it up.
Sure.
How do you feel about reports that the coach of the Timberwolves, I just lost the question, so I'm going off of memory. Yeah. How do you feel about the coach on the Timberwolves reportedly wanting to push pace? My quick answer to that would be that this is already a high pace spot with the Thunder. Thunder play at one of the underrated high paces in the league, but the defense is it's what's going to crush them there. I think that's something to note for future games, but I'm not thinking the Minnesota playing at more pace is going to help out either side here. But Eddie, what do you think about potentially having more pace for the T-Wolves?
Yeah, I think that's not something that you're able to just do by saying, hey, let's play faster. Like, you have a system which he's not going to be able to revamp in 36 hours. You have, the personnel that you have. So, at the beginning of this year, like, if you look at the beginning of this year, the percentage of coaches in the NBA saying we want to play faster and we want to push the pace was like 80. Like, literally, you could get a quote that said exactly that out of 20, 22, 24 of the 30 head coaches in the NBA in the month before the season, because we were talking about it all summer league and all preseason, and half of them failed in that pursuit so horrifically, whether you were talking about the Cavs who said it, or the Nets who said it, or there were any number of teams who said, yeah, we want to, or the Suns who said, so, So I'll go with completely irrelevant. I literally don't give a shit. Like, even if somehow him saying I want to play faster translates into him actively trying to play faster, you can't turn to players, especially veteran players, when you're dealing with, Jeff Teague and Taj Gibson, and be like, just run faster, guys. Like, I don't, that means I'll go with nothing to me. Almost, maybe slightly more than nothing, but noted that he would like to keep the pace up. More good news. Oklahoma City should be worth pointing out. I think we're still at a game time decision for Dennis Schroeder. That feels good. I don't really think it's a need tonight to Abdul Nader or T. Ferg or do anything particularly silly on that call, but feels a little bit better if you're on the shares of if you're on Westbrook there.
Let's round out the top 5 real fast. Joel Embiid, number 4 at 22%.
Interesting. Surprised you got up that much.
Me too.
That's what she said. Again, that's around the right number. Again, you always have to figure out, like, you have to amortize it with all the other ownerships and how many games are on this slate. And low 20s feels about right for Embiid at this point. He again gets a cookie without Redick in there. I have some blowout concern, but yeah, I have no strong take on that. Daddy is ambivalent.
And last kind of top 5 guy you just mentioned briefly, Bogdan Bogdanovic at 20%.
Yeah, it feels good. I'd probably be over that. I think he's just, again, when you remove those two relevant minutes pieces of Bagley and Shumpert, and him also playing the backup point time there as well. It's especially again, it always ends up being site dependent, but especially Yahoo and DraftKings, he's just still too cheap. He's not as overly cheap as a couple of the guys we talked about before, but he should cost $800 more than he does. Well, on DraftKings, if he cost $800 more on Yahoo and cost $823, whatever, that would be tough to fit in.
All right, let's go. Just got some breaking news. Also, is the feed fucked up?
I hope not.
I hope not too. I just want to make sure because mine just got laggy. But anyway, well, we'll pretend it's still going anyway. Somebody asked, actually news just came through about Jeremy Lin. A lot of people in the YouTube chat talking about it right now. Jeremy Lin picking up the start for Kevin Huerter. How does that affect your prospects on Jeremy Lin and the Hawks?
Interesting. Lin was sort of already in play the last time that the Raptors already beat the shit out of the Hawks once this year. I think they just played once. It was in Atlanta. And Lin was the only member of the Hawks who was halfway decent in that game coming off the bench, if that means anything to you. But he was already, cheap enough that there was some chance. So I'm not windmilling to get all the Jeremy Lin into my life that I can. But he's now a slightly more solid tournament play. And we like reacting to late news. So I feel pretty good about that.
All right. We are taking questions in the premium Slack now. I'm going through it. People asking for your thoughts on the Indianapolis and Cleveland game. Indianapolis, Jesus. Indiana and Cleveland game. I'm big on Sabonis today, and I'm also a little bit intrigued by Tristan Thompson. He hasn't gotten his full run because of blowouts and obviously coming back from a foot injury. I think this could be the spot he gets back on track. But what do you think here? You mentioned Kyle O'Quinn up top. What are your thoughts overall on Cleveland, who are also missing Rodney Hood today?
Yeah, I mean, Ante Zizic is back and Matthew Dellavedova is back, so Alec Burks makes a lot of sense on FanDuel, where he's 4,500, 1,000 over the floor as opposed to 17 on DK, and I think 16 or 17, which is not quite as appealing on Yahoo. So Burks on FanDuel, probably my favorite player per site on the Cavs. Again, Zizic is available again, Dellavedova is available again. Hood being out still opens up a bit of usage, so again, site dependent, but I'm probably, Burks, Sexton, and then probably Tristan Thompson for me. It is not a great matchup, but, if we think the minutes are going to trend up and he can actually get the 34 or 35 minutes they want to give to him, even against Sabonis in a somewhat sticky spot. And he'll get some time against O'Quinn, which is nice. So, that's about where I go. And then as far as Indiana goes, Depot is too cheap a little bit on both DK and Yahoo, where he's 8,400 and 34 respectively. The pace is obviously a little bit ponderous, and with everyone else back in, less excited than I would have been earlier today, but you can certainly do it. You can certainly Bojan Bogdanovic if you want to. You can certainly Thad Young now, who should look at an extra 2-3 minutes with the situation going there. But nothing I'm absolutely in love with, because again, you're dealing with pretty shitty pace and a reasonably likely blowout in this situation.
Also getting some questions about Bismack Biyombo or Willie Hernan Gomez. Which of them are you feeling more strongly about, or are they both off your radar because of them splitting so much time?
Yeah, I would play Willie if I was going to play one of those two guys. Again, Bismack has a perilously poor offensive game, so I don't think it's crazy to play Bismack Biyombo in a tournament. But were they the same price, I would be more inclined to play Willie Hernan Gomez, who would be more likely to play in a blowout, and is just a better fantasy player than Bismack. But they're both in play as guys who, the other guy can get in some foul trouble and you can catch 30 minutes. But they're generally going to fall under some of the other value plays that are available for me today. So I would rather play, Melton. I would probably rather play O'Quinn than either of them, although I have all three of those guys projected pretty close. But I have Willie on top of them, but just the price on O'Quinn makes him a little more valuable at this point, I think, on most sites again.
YouTube chat asking for thoughts on the Denver at Miami game. It's a game with one of the lower team totals on the slate, but Nikola Jokic has been crushing. Yep. Maybe a spot where Hassan Whiteside could be summoned into more duty. Is there anybody here who's jumping out to you as somebody you want to have?
Well, you hope Gary Harris. You don't hope he doesn't suit up, but in the event Gary Harris doesn't suit up, that's going to open up a little more appeal for a slightly too cheap Jamal Murray, where he's $6,700. Jokic has been. I would rather play Jokic than Whiteside among these two guys. Obviously, there's a massive price discrepancy. We're talking $3,000 difference between the two. But Jokic, I think, retains his super upside a little more than Whiteside, having watched them play each other a few times. Not an ideal fantasy environment. You hope for a couple guys out on Denver to make it palatable. But again, Miami is basically all hands on deck at this point, and Denver has been a reasonably strident defense to this point. So, James Johnson's still $4,400, or I think the flat minimum still on Yahoo. That still makes some degree of sense. That game stays close. We've seen some chance he gets up to 30 minutes. He can obviously crush that at that price, but nothing superlatively wonderful in this game for me. No, it would be a maybe take a guy at price, unless you find out that Gary Harris is out, at which point a lot more appeal for Jamal Murray for me, and then both Monty Morris and Beasley would be in play. I would prefer Morris between the two of them.
Somebody in the premium Slack asking any thoughts on Quinn Cook. Does he have some upside here? People obviously targeting that blowout. And I think Fantasy Cruncher 2 also offers up both Quinn Cook and Jonas Jerebko picking up extra minutes in a blowout. What are your thoughts on that?
I probably don't want it. I don't think there's necessarily enough time. I mean, if you're building multiple lineups and you end up with some Quinn Cook, sure, you want this game to blow out. You obviously don't correlate him with starters on either team. You don't have him with Tim Hardaway or the big four for Golden State, etc. He could certainly get there. I would rather Trey Burke, who's a little more of an upside guy. I would rather look at a couple of those other plays, who I just slightly prefer in tournaments. But the logic with Quinn Cook is sound. You're hoping there's a ridiculous blowout and he gets 24 minutes and does well in them. But it would be pretty far down my list of guys to target necessarily there. I would rather do Jerebko, who again has sort of that Hazonia-like, if you will, dual viability in that he's not necessarily dead in a competitive game. Whereas Quinn Cook is almost certainly not going to do anything useful for you if somehow this game turns out to be close.
Gary Harris also officially ruled out. You want to give your take real fast on how that affects these guys and who's going to get the biggest boost?
Again, it's the largest single boost would probably be for Monty Morris for me, but it's Monty Morris, Malik Beasley, Jamal Murray, and Jokic all feel a little bit better to me. Also a couple of the guys on Miami, if you were trying to play, some Rodney McGruder, some Josh Richardson in your life, their matchup does get a little bit better because the defensive stridentness will take the sturdiness will come down a peg there. Just not an outstanding game environment. Probably my favorite play out of that is Monty Morris, and then like $6,700 Jamal Murray makes a lot of sense. And just makes me a little happier for Jokic.
Getting questions about Lynn or Melton on both DK, Cash, GPP, and Yahoo. So what are your thoughts on Lynn or Melton on all three of those forms of games?
Well, let's see. In Cash, I'm going to play Melton. That's not terribly close for me. GPP on DK and Yahoo. Trying to think how sort of the player fields, as in the DFS player fields, differ between those two as to how much you'll get the sharps to change and the time at which the news came out. I think for me, I would play Melton in all three. I get the theory, but I can't get past having very similar minutes projections, and one guy is playing the Raptors and one guy is playing the Kings. I just can't get around that. So it is obviously ownership dependent. If we come towards lock and you believe, or we've updated our rankings and we think that Melton is going to be thrice owned what Jeremy Lin is, then by all means that makes sense as a pivot. So it ends up being largely an ownership question for me, but I would still have Melton projected like 2.5 points higher at this point.
How would you rank Warren, Sabonis, and De'Aaron Fox for DK GPP?
Yeah. I like all of them, so I'm not objecting to any of those guys in your tournament lineup. Let me start there. There's some prognostication on the ownership here. I expect Warren, then Sabonis, then Fox to be the ownership order on those three. So I suppose, presuming that's correct, and double check, I'm curious what we have for DK productions now, but I think we'll have Warren over Sabonis over Fox at present. Because again, that Sabonis number is a little pricey on DK. FanDuel makes a lot of sense at 70, 71, I think is the FanDuel price. And 20.
Warren projected for 5% right now. Sabonis projected for 10, and Fox projected for the most at 17.
Interesting. So I got it strictly backwards. So I guess Sabonis was in second either way. That's interesting for me. I would love TJ Warren at that price if that was the case. Like without Devin Booker, TJ Warren gets the most immediate impetus of just taking 6 extra shots. So if we really have 5% TJ Warren, he'd pretty clearly be my favorite of those guys, and I have him projected the highest by 0.7 fantasy points.
All right, going back to the premium Slack. Korkmaz or Dwight Powell for cash? Or no, Norman Powell, sorry. I was like, Dwight Powell's not on Slate.
There we go. I don't want to play either of those players in cash, but if I have to play one at this point, I would play Norman Powell.
Thoughts on playing Westbrook and George in a GPP with all the value you can fit in?
I'm fine with it. I obviously want to try to see if I can at least run back Teague, for example. I want to find someone on the opposing team when I'm throwing, 30% of my salary at 2 players on one side. I'd like to take some advantage of Teague or a Kogi if you feel like dropping him in there. That's still certainly a tolerable tournament play, especially on FanDuel. It's not out of play. Like it's probably not ideal if I'm building one lineup. I'm happier with one of them than both, but not by such an extent that it's unreasonable. Just one of the reasons you spend that much money on those guys is the possibility of a super ceiling, and it's rare that you'll get it with the other guy also being decent. So can you get 65 out of Westbrook and 55 out of Paul George? Sure, that's happened several times this year. But one of the reasons you play Westbrook is because there's a shot he's going to get 90, and if he does, it's much less likely that Paul George puts up a decent number. So I'm fine with it. Like, I wouldn't feel bad if I had it, but it's not something I'm intentionally trying to do. But if I find myself being led that way, then yeah, I'm trying to get some Teague or some Towns, obviously, or some Kogi or Saric even, I guess counts, running it back.
And if you are a premium member, there was just an ownership percentages or projections update, so you can go check that out yourselves now and weed through. Nothing noteworthy up top that's worth addressing for everybody. Would you restrict your lineup so that Wiggins and Towns are not in the same lineup?
No, that game has enough pace that they can both get there. Again, I imagine they are both slightly better as far as, like, every player has a value. So Wiggins has a value of, 34.5 fantasy points tonight. And I think his net overall likely average value, if you play the game out infinite times, probably goes down to 34.1 fantasy points if Towns is in there. So it is a slight net negative, but I don't think setting a rule is necessary. But again, it depends how many of your lineups are spitting them out next to each other without the rule. So if you end up with 21 Towns and 17 Wiggins and 14 of them are next to each other, then yeah, set a rule or something to stop that from happening. But if you have 21 Towns and 17 Wiggins and 3 of them are in the same lineup, no, that would not upset me, and hopefully your rules and other restrictions give you a little bit more Westbrook in that lineup.
Any thoughts on Harry Giles tonight with Yeah, with Marvin Bagley out.
Yeah, you can certainly do. I'm not a giant fan, but just because it seems very unlikely you get 20 minutes. So you're really looking on him just absolutely smashing the universe in 17 minutes or something like that. But he can put up, 26, 30. So probably favored on DK where I want to say $3,200. I left him in my rankings as like a D in cash, but a B in tournaments. So I'm just fine with some exposure to Giles. But the most likely outcome is 15 minutes and 17 and a half fantasy points, which is very meh, but it's doable. I wouldn't stage a shitty if you had it.
What are your thoughts on Kemba Walker tonight? Got a 230 total in that game, under 10% ownership for him. Not a lot of people on him.
Yeah, he's just too expensive. So as far as do I like him as a points per dollar play? No, I haven't projected for north of 40, but that still just isn't paying off the nut he is throwing at you. But feel free to have some Kemba Walker, but it's a tournament play where he's just not going to compare to say Beal at a similar price as far as what you project him for. But at what I imagine is 4 to 6% ownership or what have you, it makes plenty of sense.
Would you go Bam or Josh Jackson on FanDuel?
I would go Josh Jackson in probably all formats. This is not the worst Whiteside spot. I think he gets time, so I don't mind the tournament pivot to Bam, who I think is $300 more, and I would probably rather go there than Sarge because you're going to have 5% Bam and whatever 22% Sarge on FanDuel. So I'm fine with making that swap, but just which player do I prefer? I have to stick with Josh Jackson.
Okay, there you go. Nailing your Jacksons now. If you said Tito Jackson, I would have been concerned.
Sorry, Miss Jackson. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on playing Mikal Bridges, Melton, and Josh Jackson together in a lineup?
I'm fine with it. They're just so cheap. Like you're picking three guys. I don't mind it on FanDuel. Somewhere else where you have to play all. Like on FanDuel, that's just fine. You only need two of them to be good, and that's almost a likely conclusion. Somewhere else, if you're getting a little dicey, and you'd obviously want to run it back with some Kangs, but FanDuel especially, I have no issue with it.
Bogdanovich over Otto Porter for DK, or would you go the other way?
For the ownership in one tournament lineup, I would probably just play Otto Porter again. I tinker with the lineup all day. Right now, I have them both in front of me. But if you're saying I can only play one of them in your tournament lineup, yeah, I probably play Porter over Bogdanovich. I prefer Bogdanovich. I have him projected for a couple points more, and he's a much safer play. But if the ownership is about where I expect, which is whatever we're saying, 20-22 for Bogdanovich, and I imagine 12 or 13 for Otto Porter, I'd probably go that way.
Rank McConnell, Lynn, and Melton for a FanDuel GPP.
Yeah, McConnell would be the tournamenty guy I would go to in Philly if I'm looking to do something with the Redick news, just the greater usage now off the bench. They're constantly giving him his 26, 28 minutes regardless. And because of the ownership, I would probably go McConnell, then Melton, then Lynn, I think. Like I like Jeremy Lin a lot as a player, but now that they've announced him starting, the ownership sort of edge we had there, I think sort of disappears a lot again. And Toronto's defense is extremely legit, and yeah, I worry about maybe he now gets 30 minutes and also gets like the backup point time. I'm going to be interested to see what they do there. They're all just fine, but I'll still keep Lynn on the bottom of my rankings.
Would you go DeAndre Ayton or TJ Warren for a DK GPP?
Yeah. I will go TJ Warren if we really have him at 5%. I'm there. I'm in. You sold me at 5%. You had me at 5%.
Yeah, that does seem low to me, but it came up in the update too, so I guess that must really be what we think it's going to be at. So interesting. A lot of people don't want to pay up for TJ Warren, I guess. Hield or Tobias Harris for DK.
I'm curious what the FanDuel ownership number we have. Like, it should be 45%.
I'll look it up, but you answer Hield or Tobias Harris for DK cash. And he has 3 sons and 1 king already, if that's a noteworthy fact.
For cash, I'll probably go Tobias Harris. I really like Tobias Harris's spot, and for cash, it's going to be real. It's more likely that Tobias Harris will get you 30 than Hield will. Like it's a little more likely that Hield is going to objectively, fail on you.
So it's just a price thing. On FanDuel, he's projected for 33% ownership. So that
Okay.
is a big
I'll take
discrepancy.
the over on both those numbers. By the way, we can check me later now, but I'll go with something like 40 to 45% on FanDuel and like 12 to 14% on DK. I think he will have more. Again, the projections are right more often than I am, but when I think they might be significantly off, I find it hard to imagine that without Booker that number doesn't come in at double digits.
Which of these four do you think has the highest upside on Yahoo? Lynn, Trey Burke, D'Anthony Melton, or Monte Morris?
The highest upside.
Correct.
They're all in the same area. They're all guys who, we're not sure the minutes are going to come in. They're all looking at, maybe only 20 minutes, and they're all looking at, Burke is the least safe of them. Burke could not play. Even without no looking at there, Burke not touching the court wouldn't be the most shocking thing I've seen in my life. So I'll probably say Melton, as weird as it sounds. Just who has the most upside? I think you're telling me one of these guys gets 45 fantasy points tonight. Who's the most likely guy to have done it? It's probably Melton. It needs to have gone sideways, and he needs to have played 33 minutes or 30 minutes. But that could really happen, and the matchup's pretty sexy for him. So I will go that way.
All right. Let's see. Anything else? Thoughts on Ariza on Yahoo, or just in general? We didn't talk much Ariza.
Yeah, he's fine. The price has now come to I'm trying to remember the Yahoo number. It's like 20, right? It's 23, so at that point he is priced appropriately. So he is if you're building your 10 lineups on Yahoo tonight, which you should do, because they're not charging you anything to play tonight. They said you could play gratis. It's nice of you to use that and play. But I'm fine having one. It's not a guy that I'm certainly trying to get on.
All right. And use that promo code Osmo if you are depositing on Yahoo to get $30 on any $30 or more deposit. Oh God, Vince Carter, we talked about him already. Favorite 3.5K FanDuel power forward.
Sarge is 3.6, so you're just making life difficult for me. By the time I get there, we may have started, but there's a real chance it's Harry Giles, who I think is, right now it's Harry Giles as I look through the list. It's currently Harry Giles. It's Harry Giles. There you go. I should have known that was coming. Harry Giles.
Let's see. Buddy and Beal in shooting guard cash. Is that okay? That's a question.
Yeah, that's fine. Buddy and Beal is fine. Buddy, I think the final, either the cash or the tournament lineup I ended up with on FanDuel had all Kings at shooting guard.
Let's see. Kyle Quinn or Trey Burke for DK cash?
Oh, Kyle O'Quinn. You can't play Trey Burke in cash. Again, he may not play. That's sort of a non-starter when it comes to cash.
Paul George and Bogdan or Westbrook and Hernan Gomez for DK GPP?
I don't know, but we're locked.
This one should still be okay, though.
What was it?
Paul George and Bogdan or Westbrook and Willie Hernan Gomez?
Yeah, I like both of those very much. I'm probably slightly more inclined towards Westbrook and Sweet Dick Willie there.
All right, and this is a FanDuel question, but it came in at 4 o'clock my time, so that seems like it might still be relevant. Morris or Korkmaz for FanDuel cash?
I feel like I have a better cheap play for cash. We're talking about cheap power shooting guards. But anyhow, the question is Morris or Korkmaz. For cash, I will go with. It's weird. Cash on FanDuel is very weird with the drop a score thing. I'll go with Korkmaz.
And Malik Beasley officially announced as starting as well. Does that change anything for you with him?
No, still like him. Still like Morris a touch more. So that's what I expected. All right. I'm pulling up some DK ownership here.
Sweet. It's time for America's favorite game Daddy likes. Of course, we are going to find out what ownership projections of games that are currently locked Mr. Fastity Fear currently approves of as Daddy. Somebody in the YouTube chat was getting real homophobic about the Daddy thing. By the way, you could say the word Daddy without it being that weird, guys. It's not that deep.
Daddy could like girls only. I don't understand. How does the use of
People are very uncomfortable with their own personal sexualities if you use any sort of.
I'm trying to figure out what it has to Daddy could be straight or gay or bi or cocker spaniel. I don't understand how any specific. I guess a daddy is liking men, so I guess that makes some sense. Like, I guess if we
Yeah.
did daddy likes also for the WNBA, then it would be so.
Well, that's a patriarchy, and we don't want to have that.
Nope, nope, can't have that. All right, Joel Embiid, 30.22%. So that obviously swelled more than we expected. That's what she said.
Jeez.
But yeah, I mean, I like Embiid. Embiid versus the Wizards is a monster spot. As opposed to a lot of players who play 4 shifts in a game, where they play beginning of the first, end of the second, beginning of the third, end of the fourth. Embiid plays like these 5-minute to 6-minute chunks where he plays beginning of the first, the overlap of the first to the second, the end of the second, the beginning of the third, the overlap of the third to the fourth. And the fourth. So there is some extra security for him in blowout situations where he usually gets 5/6 of his time as opposed to 3/4 like a lot of players. And that extra, 8 1/3% time that he's getting there ends up being relevant. So, one of the reasons I'd have concerns of taking anyone against the Wizards is the Wizards can certainly give it up so sweet for just about anyone. But yeah, again, that's about the right number. Probably Daddy doesn't like slightly just because I felt good about it at 22, 23. 30 is a big-ass number, and there's plenty of decent centers. Kyle O'Quinn, 20%. Yeah, that feels about right. I'm okay with that. Domantas Sabonis, 19%. Daddy likes that. Even at 7,400 on DK, you can get a monster game there, and a little more likely it stays close without Turner, and I go slightly like that. That's just fine. Furkan Korkmaz, 14%. Daddy doesn't like that. I project him for 16 fantasy points right now. That seems, he's very safe, but the odds of him randomly pulling out the upside game. We've seen it before, where he was out there and you had Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons diming him up, and he had the big game. But I think that's not the best spot necessarily. Bradley Beal, 13.67%. Daddy likes, and especially if you're playing MB, there's some nice correlation there. Otto Porter Jr., 13%. Daddy obviously likes that. I was a big fan of his. Ben Simmons, 11%. That's just fine. Oladipo, 8.6%. Daddy loves that. That's at 8.4K. That's a very attractive number. Alec Burks, 7.5, feels fine. Larry Nance, 7%. That feels fine. Jimmy Butler, 5%. That feels fine. Tristan Thompson, 4.2. Daddy likes that. If you had your Tristan Thompson, you're getting him at a good price, and you like that low ownership. Bojan, 4%. Feels good. Jeff Green, 4%. Really like that. I mean, Jeff Green, is still going to be starting, and even though they're saying, 30 minutes for Otto off the bench, he's still going to get enough time, though I expect him to see a minute or two here. More of that time's coming off the Sam Deckers of the world if this game stays close. So Jeff Green's still just a little bit underpriced there. TJ McConnell, 4%. Daddy likes that a lot, especially with, again, 14% for Con, 4%. TJ McConnell, I prefer TJ McConnell straight up. Trevor Ariza, 4%. As mentioned, just fine to roll out there in a tournament, but now priced sort of appropriately. Jordan Clarkson, 3.32%. Yeah, at the price he's dealing with now, and no Rodney Hood, I think I'm just fine with that. Satoransky, 2.75%. Okay, that's tolerable. Kojo, 2.4%. Again, with all hands on deck in that backcourt, that seems not necessarily ideal. The Deuce Young, 2.5%. That feels pretty good. Obviously, with no Miles out there. Cedi Osman, 2%. Not really. Tyreek Evans, 2%. Again, people thought some guards might be out and didn't have time to change. But again, $3,600. $3,600 Tyreek, even in his normal 19 minutes, is not dreadful. So Daddy will tolerate 2% Tyreek. And 1.71% JJ Redick. Congratulations, you played yourself. Look at that, way up there. 2% of the rake. Knocked off for you.
There we go. One quick question before we go, because people are both in the YouTube chat and the premium Slack are asking. Beasley starting. A lot of love for him from the people in the chat right now. Yeah. But would you go him or Melton in a DKGPP?
At this point, I would probably go to him on the full slate. So I like switching to him. On the late slates, I don't think the ownership disparity will be as significant as it is on the main slate, because just a lot of people don't swap. So it's one of those weird situations where I probably like Beasley more now on the main slate, but would still rather play Melton on the late, where you're going to get a better relative ownership between the two.
There we go. Oh, and a real hot chat to close this out in the YouTube chat. Gortat drops 50 fantasy points today. I think we saw that full moon once this year. I don't think it happened.
Well, we already had Polish Heritage Day for the year. That's the big thing with him, where now it's like 6 years in a row on Polish Heritage Day he averages literally 37 fantasy points. And he's coming off several very, very good games in a row, but, he's still, I didn't bring him up because, I don't have a strong take there. It's pretty obvious. Like, he's been really good. He's been crushing his price. It could happen again today. You're making some prognostication and guesses about how the center minutes are going to go. Maybe they start Hernan Gomez again today. I like that a lot for him. If they start Biyombo, I'd probably rather not play Gortat in that case. But, Gortat's been good.
Yeah, I don't know that I trust that one yet, but if he has one more day, we'll talk about this, and it'll take me a couple days.
He's old like me. You can only keep it up for so long. That's what she said. See? Like 10 today.
Yeah. Well, it's also not even just the age thing. It's just not him attacking the basket and attacking the pick and roll quite as much as he was in Washington with John Wall, because I think he's just not getting the ball on those. So then there's a trickle down where he just doesn't put in the effort. But maybe he starts getting it more and it keeps him motivated. Who knows? Basketball players are fickle creatures.
To be sure. Professional athletes. It's an amazing, and again, I'm by no means an expert at this particular what have you, but it's the mind. The mental side of professional sports is amazing for me. Whether or not you are still one of the best players in the world and treated as such in just the, or even like it's really tough to be like a bench player in the NBA. Because like, if you're a bench player in the NBA, you're one of the 300 best basketball players in the world out of the 100 million people who are playing basketball. And you've been the best athlete at every tier of your career, almost certainly. Where you were the best player on your middle school team, and you were the pitcher and the best hitter on your baseball team, and you were the star of the football team, and you focused on basketball, and were the best player on your varsity team, and then were courted by all sorts of college programs, and probably the best player on your college team, and got drafted and handed a few $1 million, and then they tell you to sit over there and watch those guys who are better than you. That's a shift. Like that's a real it requires a temperament. To deal with that. I mean, you ask, like, that's something to do with the struggles you have out of, say, Andrew Wiggins, who was, thought he was going to be LeBron. And he's not. And that's hard to deal with.
Yeah, I agree. There's a reason that sports psychologists should be more in vogue besides just the obvious, stresses and personal pressures. I mean, like with Cody Parkey's kick over the weekend, there's been reports about him and he had to shut down his dog's Instagram page because people were just berating him with insults and death threats and insulting his wife and insulting the dog. It's like,
insulting the dog?
I know, right?
Sorry, insulting the dog cracks me up. Fuck you, dog.
You asshole. What do you don't even know where to poop. You can't use the toilet, you dick.
You poop slightly to the left side of where you're supposed to poop. Like, I don't even know where.
Unreal. But yeah, be nice to people. Be nice to both athletes and normal human beings.
Nice to everybody. We're gonna have a national press conference in 2 hours about just being assholes to each other for no reason. So
Sure.
be nice to people unless you have a really good reason not to be, and usually you don't.
That's fair. Yeah, it's a 2019, a year of love. That's what we try to push on our DFS channel. It's a year of love in 2019 amongst all of our male hosts who call each other daddy.
Yes.
Make them real uncomfortable. All right, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you use that promo code live before lock right now. Again, get in there now. Do it. Sign up. Use the free week that you get there. All the ownership projections and rankings, including rankings from Eddie, the guy right here, who is the best host on the stream to the left of me on camera. Use that promo code. Check it out. Live before lock. All the stuff that you could possibly want right at your fingertips. Do it now. And we'll be back again soon with more of this. Actually, we'll be back tomorrow, so very convenient. But good luck to everybody out there, and we will see you again soon.
Good night, everybody.